Hey everyone, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates podcast. For episode 1, we're just going to dive into the moves that Tom made in the past week or so. Let's just jump right in and start with the extensions.
So I personally think the best player that we just extended was Meier. The other couple guys that were with us last year to get an extension, it's a little peg below that. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. I'm sure we are in full agreement on this one. So.
Yeah, BP is shaking in his boots over there.
First of all, I love that you led off with we're diving into Tom's moves. We're on a first name basis now with Mr. Fitzgerald.
Absolutely.
It is hot Tom summer.
It
is hot Tom summer. I'll say that. I mean, the extensions really are what they are. I think they all came in at about the term we thought they would be and about the salary we thought they'd be. And I think the big story is that we really didn't overpay for either Bratt or Meier, because both of them, I mean, coming into these negotiations, especially, I mean, trust me, my Twitter mentions as a Jesper Bratt fan for the past 6 months or so have been an absolute war zone about people who assumed that they knew what, Bratt's camp was asking for. And everyone was like, this guy thinks he's worth 9 or more. There's no way. His camp really needs to come down off that number or whatever. And then he comes and signs for 7.8. And everyone's just like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, that works. No, let's do that. So, I feel like Timo was a little more, a lot of people saw the qualifying offer number of $10 million for 1 year, and they were like, oh my God, like, we cannot pay this guy $10 million a year. So for it to come in, people already kind of accepted the fact that, he's going to come in around 9, we'd go up to 9.5, whatever it is. And when it comes in at 8.8, everyone, again, is just like, oh, yeah, okay, let's just do that. So I feel like there was just a lot of any question mark there was came in either where we needed it to or a little under where we needed it to.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Especially with that Bratt deal, to be honest with you. I kind of assumed that he would be somewhere between 8 and 8.5, kind of closer to 8. But to get him below 8 million a year is awesome, so awesome. And then with Timo, the things that I kind of heard were that he would be signing for under 8.5. So I was a little surprised that he came in at 8.8. But he's probably a $10 million player, like his qualifying offer is. It's super hard to get a power forward nowadays, let alone someone of that caliber. I would argue he's probably the second best caliber power forward in the league, next to Matt Tkachuk. So yeah, I'm stoked about both of them. They're both unreal players.
Before we dive into that a little bit further, because I definitely want to talk about definitely those two guys, and then Haula, who has returned with us and extended as well. Figured for those that did skip episode 0, probably should mention I am Jake, hosting our daily Good Morning Devils fans, and a constant contributor here going forward with the Devil's Advocates podcast. Team Timo, as far as the best extension for the entire offseason, not just Devils, I'm talking any team, best contract signing in the league.
Interesting.
And then obviously we have BP, the BrattPack, with us. Obviously, as his name would tell, agrees with me. Timo, the best contract in the offseason. And who started us off, JP over there. Is it a clean sweep, or are you Team Timo?
I am Team... Oh man, that's tough. I think I'm Team Timo. Just because I love watching him play. Not that I don't love watching Bratt play. Just putting that out there. I obviously love what he does, but Timo is just it's hard to find a player with that level of skill and that level of like grittiness to his game. I know I'm an analytics guy, and the word grit is like heresy to us, but it's fun to watch. It's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, just to kind of jump on what Jake said, we kind of skipped introductions and went right into it because that's how good these contracts are. We get stress that point. But yeah, no, it's your boy BP out here, the BrattPack. But I think when it comes to grit and analytics, there's almost this like idea that they go against each other, because there's been this argument for a long time that, you know, players who play with grit have this inherent value that even if their other numbers are low, that their grit kind of, or their physicality, or whatever you want to call it, really kind of makes up for that. And you need a certain amount of players that carry that. And I think that's where that argument is just like, no, we need players that are just good. And then there's these kind of exceptions like Timo Meier and Matthew Tkachuk who have the grit, but they're also just good. And that's kind of what matters here, is if you can be a good hockey player who, you know, scores goals, get assists, you know, play off the puck well, and also add this like level of grit and physicality, there's definitely, you know, a certain value to it. But I think a lot of people just kind of overcompensate for these kind of this old guy hockey mentality of, oh, well, if you have grit, you're a good player. And that's really just not it. It's just like, you're just missing part of the picture that guys like, you know, Meier kind of paint the full picture of. You know what I mean?
Right.
Add a little bit. I'm sure JP could probably speak to this more specifically. I don't know if he has these numbers in front of him or knows them right off the dome. But, you know, as Devils fans, we all know Timo probably would say himself he wished he produced on the score sheet more in the playoffs than he did. But it was also very apparent that he was involved in every play that he was on the ice for. He drove the Rangers mad. And in Carolina, he showed up more on the score sheet than he did in the first round, but still kept that intimidating play about him. My last point on that is, for those that are like anti-analytics, they would probably point to Timo and say, hey, you know, he's not on the score sheet, but he clearly impacted the game. Well, the analytics say that too.
Yeah, they do. I was just going to say, I actually do have the numbers in front of me right now.
Like, you have people that are physical that your brain sees them do stuff. Maybe it's a big hit, or, you know, maybe they do make like one nice power move to the net, but like don't score, but have like a decent chance. But other than that, they're mostly getting hemmed in their own zone. You know, that's not that great. You know, you might remember the one big or two big plays and kind of scoff over the like kind of more minimal them getting hemmed in. But with Timo, it all just comes together. You can see it, and the analytics back up. So JP could definitely talk a little bit more specific on that for Timo. And then I want to, I was joking around because we have BP here with us, but I love the Bratt contract. I want to get into that. But if you have anything on, that marrying of grit and skill with Timo, if you have anything specific.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Just kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying with the grit to like big hits, kind of like draw a lot of attention. I think a really good example of that is none other than Jacob Trouba. A lot of people think he's a lot better than he is because he, dishes out hits. He obviously broke Timo's nose in the playoffs, and Ranger fans went wild, which sure, cool. But other than that, he wasn't all that great in the playoffs. But yeah, like I said before, I do have the numbers in front of me, actually. Now, microstats, that's stuff like shot attempts, pass attempts, zone entries and exits, retrievals in the defensive zone. Timo was first on the Devils against the Rangers. He had the highest microstat game score against the Rangers. And then for the entire playoffs for the Devils, he was second on the team to Jack, which I think, obviously Jack is unreal, so he's going to be up there. But to have Timo above Nico and Bratt and Severson, and even McLeod had a really strong playoffs, I thought. But to see Timo above those was, kind of expected with what you said, Jake, not showing up on the score sheet, but kind of showing up everywhere else in the game. Yeah, and then let's talk about that Bratt contract. I love it. Love Bratt. BP, how about take it away?
Before we go to BP, I gotta say one thing. You called it early, but you called it. You called the signing months ahead of time, Dan. The insider knowledge you have on that is, I gotta get your sources, dude.
Yeah, I mean, all three of us know exactly what my source was, but I called it about a year early, a year too early. No, honestly, this Bratt contract is, I very selfishly have kind of two approaches to it. One being, just a Devils fan looking at what I think it is, and then 2, being a Bratt super fan with kind of a personal, vested interest in it, where, like I said a little earlier on, my mentions and my replies have been a war zone for about a year now of, well, what are you going to do when Bratt resigns somewhere else? Or what are you going to do when he gets traded because he won't sign here? Stuff like that. So him signing for 8 years and at a value that will not have people jumping at me all the time saying that he's vastly overpaid, very selfishly is a good thing for me. And I appreciate that. But just as a Devils fan, not with a self-interest, I think it's an amazing contract for the simple fact that we have him for 8 years. He's part of the core. We've made that clear. He's a back-to-back 73-point scorer. I respect that he wanted to just match his total from last season. What a good guy, right? But he went from one very, very good season to being a proven player. And I think a lot of people should find comfort in that with an 8-year deal. And I don't know if this is just an argument of what he's actually worth or an argument of what we thought the negotiations were going like or how they were going. But we thought as fans that there was this drama about someone making more than Jack Hughes and this little, salary hierarchy that, I don't want to say fans made up because I know some national reporters kind of pushed it as well, but that we never heard from the Devils about. They never said that they were doing that. So there was this argument of, well, no one can make more than Jack, and Jesper's asking for more than Jack, and we can't give him that. And there was this kind of back and forth of, oh, well, he's asking for too much. If he's asking for 9+, he's really not worth that. We're going to overpay him, whatever it was. So to see him come in at 7.8 for 8 years is such a fair number, and it's such a fair number relative to his actual production, because a lot of people are like, oh, he thinks he's a superstar, he thinks he's on the same plane as like a guy like Jack, and 7.8 is not that. If he was asking for 9 and he got 9 or whatever the number was, and he has to play up to that, sure, but at 7.8 we look at guys like Kevin Fiala, who he's totally comparable to, and I just think that the contract he got meets the play that he's put forward. It meets the expectations of him moving forward. I think it's fair all around. So I'm personally very happy with it.
I wanted to throw in there based on that. I'm not going to name any names. If you search Twitter, you can find it. But I'd say a fairly reputable reporter that reports on the Devils did mention that that the team was adamant about not paying any forward more than Jack.
Right.
It was a direct quote. But after that, so that was about 4 months ago, only a couple of weeks ago when Tom was on the Jeff Merrick show, he very specifically said he does not believe in a contract hierarchy.
Yeah, nor should he.
Every contract's its own thing, with its own comparables, et cetera, et cetera. So
No, exactly.
BP said, it didn't have to come in under Jack, as we see with Timo. But man, am I glad that it did, because what a steal for our boy.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were saying it was a fair contract. If anything, I feel like he's kind of underpaid. I think is like, at least, The Athletic has these player cards where it shows the market value. Bratt's market value was right around 10 mil.
JP, do you know how they determined that market value off the top of your head?
Honestly, I don't. I know it's a conglomeration of offensive impact and defensive impact, I think, are the most heavily weighted categories.
So I know analytics community gets a lot of crap when you try and ask them, so how did they determine that? And then you don't know. But for people that have that opinion, if you check their contract model, it is pretty freaking spot on with almost every contract that comes out. And the ones that don't match, you can almost see where it deviated. And
they also have all of their models like publicly, out there. So if you want, I haven't looked into it myself because I just kind of trust the numbers.
That's why I said off the top of your head, because I know if you look into it, it is there to view. It's not like those things are hidden.
No, absolutely. It's all out there to be seen by anyone who's curious. But yeah, the Athletic had him right around 10 million for market value. And I think kind of to BP's point, the whole hierarchy for contract negotiations for the Devils is so stupid to me. Because you look at Jack Hughes' contract, and obviously he makes $8 million. It's not like a cheap contract, but it's one of, if not the best contract in the league. So when you're trying to negotiate other contracts and you have that as your example, like, it's impossible to, push forward the we can't pay anyone more than Hughes idea, because he's way underpaid. Way underpaid. So, like, Timo coming in and getting 8.8, absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. Jack isn't even the highest paid player on the team. Dougie makes 9.
Yeah.
Right.
Timo's also underpaid.
Right. Timo's also underpaid.
Well, if I could throw it, when you talk about the Jack Hughes contract, it's funny how, it's kind of the same people who are saying Jack's contract is such a good value and he's so underpaid and stuff. And then they'll turn around and say, oh, well, a guy like Bratt can't make more than Hughes because if Jack's worth 8, do you think Jesper's worth more than 8? And it's like, well, you just admitted that Jack isn't worth 8, that he's getting under. If Jack was making 10 and we're talking about Jesper making 8, it's like, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. He's just lower than Jack. So you kind of can't have it both ways in that sense, where if we're acknowledging that Jack is underpaid and then we're going to use that as the standard of, oh, well, that's how much he makes. If you think you're worth more than him, you should get more. It's like, well, no, he's worth more. So maybe we should kind of talk about that as the standard,
Exactly.
Jack at 10 would also be underpaid. So.
Yeah, Jack should be making like 14 mil.
Don't be surprised when McDavid is making $16 million and Jack is still making 8.
Yeah, seriously.
I think the salary cap came out this week. I think the max contract is 16.7. So look for that on McDavid's next deal.
Hey, I think Matthews is going to get it. That's my hot take. I think Matthews is going to get a max value deal.
You think?
I do. That's my hot take.
I hope he does. He deserves it. I hope he does. Every hockey player takes less than they deserve.
No,
okay,
exactly.
Not every hockey player. Some of them are definitely overpaid. But
yes.
I don't blame them. Like, you're not going to say no to being overpaid. So,
oh yeah,
for them, good for them.
Yeah, big personal liberties guy over here. Get as much money as you can.
Definitely. But
yeah, go ahead.
You might have been moving towards this as well, but we had one other returning Devil.
Yep.
Mr. Eric Haula, 3 more years at, what was it, 3.15?
3.15. I think that's a fair deal. We just talked about a lot of players getting overpaid. I think that one's a fair deal.
I think, if I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me, but the contract projection for him was a little over that. So if you want to go by those, he did take a slight cut, but no, fair value for what he brings. Especially when your best players basically at his end of year conference says, I love this guy. Right. You maybe throw him a bone a little bit.
It is. I will say it's a little funny to me how much value fluctuates in terms of production, where if you look at Eric Haula for the first half of this year, he was snake bitten, wasn't producing quite where he needed to. And he's been around the league a while. He's an older, relatively speaking guy. And so we know what Eric Haula is. The league knows what Eric Haula is. Theoretically speaking, his value at this point in his career shouldn't change all that much because you know exactly what, the player he is. But if you look at kind of the first half of this season versus the second half of this season, he went from a 1-year deal at $2 million to a 3-year deal at $3 million plus just by having a good second half of a season plus playoffs. And it's just always so interesting and kind of incredible to me how much value fluctuates, because I really do wonder how much of his value on this contract is really due to like half a season across a 10-year career. You know what I mean? Well,
yeah. Even looking at the last, say 15 games of the year, he was on a scoring bender.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's that plus playoffs. I think if he fell off a bit in playoffs, it maybe would have came in even a little bit lower. Yeah. But you could see his value that he brought there. And he's a known commodity, and he can at least play with Jack. And step in there. He can fill that. He's not the ideal one, especially, we'll get to it, but the other, Timo, Bratt, and, we'll get to Toffoli. he should not be needed in the top 6 anymore. But
Right.
he could. And so really filling in that third line, which is the ideal spot for him, I think it's a great move. I love that he got the full no trade on the first 2 years.
Yep.
He bounced around a lot. He can finally settle in with his family a bit, especially because his wife's best friend was just traded here last season. I love those little, stories. Just, I think there's always something more. I don't know how much of an impact it makes on the ice, but when you have happy players, especially traveling in the Metropolitan and the Jersey, you're home most nights. You're with your family.
Right. Yep.
Happy wife, happy life, man. And if her best friend is right in the area with her, coming home to a happy wife, Eric Hall is probably on cloud 9 right now with that.
Yeah, no, I really agree. Kind of touching on what you said before with his kind of ability to play up and down the lineup at this point. Jack Hughes, whether we like to admit this or not, Jack Hughes played better when Eric Haula was on his line. He just did. I would prefer Haula in a third line role, obviously, but if need be, for injury or, Lindy likes to mix up the lineups, as we all know, sometimes to a fault. But if need be, Haula could obviously slot into top 6 role with Hughes there and have success, like you said. And I think that's really important, just to have that depth and be able to move up and down the lineup. And, as much as I would like to say, yeah, I wish we got him at, $3 million instead of 3.15. Like, it's not that much of a difference. So to have that ability and that flexibility, I think is really huge for the Devils moving forward.
My last note on Haula, because we do have a lot we're trying to get to for this episode. Keeping in mind he shot at 3 or 4% for almost over half the season, he still put up only 3 points less than he did in Boston the year prior, where people were saying he had a good year.
Yeah.
It was only 3 points less. Now, he was playing with Jack Hughes, but he was also, I think, the 2C for most of the season in Boston that year.
Yeah, he was playing with Pasternak last year.
It's not like he was playing with scrubs over there.
Right.
So if he even remotely shot, 7% in the first half of the season there with Jack, he probably puts up a 20, maybe even 25 goal season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good deal for the Devils.
And then you touched on this before. Let's talk about that Toffoli trade, huh?
Absolutely.
Oh man, what a banger!
I want to hear BP's take on this one.
Yeah, me too.
I really didn't see it coming. I don't think anyone was talking about him too much. I did hear some chatter here and there about Toffoli, but I don't think he was really kind of a main target on our mind. So when it went through, I was blindsided by it. I was shocked. I think it's an amazing trade. I think that the foundation Tom Fitzgerald has built has led us to be able to do stuff like this, where there was this kind of vision, and I know the Philadelphia 76ers started their process that they were famous for, and it was, tank to get the draft picks and build your team from within and, have good contracts. And that's really what we did for a couple of years now. And, we're talking about, Jack Hughes being underpaid. And I mean, that's the conversations we get to have now.
Right.
So we built this foundation, and it exists in a way that now that we're ready to really strike, Tom Fitzgerald can go out and make these trades that really otherwise wouldn't have really done anything. But now we're just adding on to this core that we already have. And Tyler Toffoli is another guy that we can absolutely use to win now. And the price we paid for him was at a surplus of what we have. And I think that's another really important point, is we're not giving up stuff that really matters. Especially, I mean, we can look at the Timo Meier trade, giving up guys like Zetterlund or Doolin. The picks are the picks, but is Fabian Zetterlund going to make or break this team? No. Is, Mook Madulin, he hasn't played an NHL game yet, and he's coming to North America for the first time this fall. We really didn't give up anything important to winning right now. And I think that trend continues with this Toffoli trade, where Sharangovich, I liked him a lot. I enjoyed his time here, but is he really going to be a difference maker for this team to win a cup? Absolutely not. And a third round pick, who cares? So
well, yeah. Yeah,
Go
I mean,
for it.
it's not even that it was a third round pick. It's we traded Damon Severson, who we already knew who we weren't going to have back, for a third round pick. Like we knew we weren't going to have Severson. I feel like we kind of knew we weren't going to have Sharon Govich.
Yeah.
To turn two pieces that weren't going to be on the team next year into Tyler Toffoli, like a 34 goal scorer with the Calgary Flames, who couldn't shoot at an open net from 5 feet away last year. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely, and that's exactly it. We're just like cutting off this like excess that we've built over the last few years and turning it into real win now pieces. And I think it's just a beautiful continuation of what Tom Fitzgerald has been doing. So I would give the trade a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, easily.
Got a couple comments on this one. So, could not reiterate enough what JP said about basically taking free assets almost. We're talking, I think at the time it was the second sign and trade in history.
Yep.
With Sevo. So we're talking a UFA that could have walked for nothing, which we were expecting. We talked about in our episode 0. We're pretty big Sevo fans here. Has some faults, but gosh, did his pluses outweigh those? We couldn't afford what he earned and deserved. Would we have liked him back on a much, much smaller contract than he got? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure.
But he earned every penny of that contract, and we got a third rounder for a guy that was not going to be here today.
He had 1 foot out the door already.
Yeah.
For Sharon Govich, that's a player that a couple seasons ago, we probably don't make this trade. Now, any detractors will say Toffoli is in his 30s. This is his last year of his contract. We moved out a young RFA who had a previous 20-plus goal season.
Yep.
Just about.
I think it was 23.
Can play center, can play wings, plays the PK. Pretty good. I mean, I love Yeezy. I mean, he's a good player. But where the team is at now, like you said, you make this trade 10 out of 10 times. No doubt.
Yeah, twice on Sunday.
Twice on Sunday.
JP and I had talked about this. I almost looked at Toffoli as like a pipe dream. Yeah. I thought this was someone that we had talked about before we even knew he was available, of someone we would love to have. And then when we found out that the Calgary Flames were burning it down, pun completely intended, that Toffoli was available, and then a week and a couple days later, he's a Devil. Whew.
Yeah,
Whew.
no, I mean, yeah, that's something that I for my very small, very new Twitter account, as soon as I saw that Tyler Toffoli was being shopped by the Flames, I sent out something like, "Please, Tom." Yeah. And that was it. That was the whole tweet. And then like 3 days later, it happened completely out of the blue, and I was like, "Dude, I'm a prophet. This is awesome."
Plus, just you and your buddy Tom, first name basis.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
Real quick, guys, we have episode 1, our first breaking news while live recording. Shana from The Athletic is saying Tarasenko to the Hurricanes.
Oh, okay. Dude, they're spending a lot of money. They're going for it.
I think they were offended by saying they had tight wallets. Jeez.
Yeah. No, I mean, what, $8 million to Orlov, $4.5 million to Bunting, now Tarasenko. Like, they're spending, but good for them. Their window's like 2-3 years. So
yeah, exactly. So for anyone that watched my morning show, I had this exact take. I've said the Devils, I think, bar none, are the best team in the East. Yep. The only team that is even sniffing our coattails is Carolina. If there was any team, they knocked us out in the second round. Full props to them. Rod runs an amazing system.
Yeah,
just phenomenal. He knows what he wants, and his players stick to it. And absolutely loading up this year. They realize, I said this previously, they are on in my opinion, you said 2 to 3. I think they're on a 1 to 2 year window.
Okay.
I'm saying 1 to 2. Maybe with the cap blowing up, maybe a third year, bringing some guys back if they get kind of like some sweetheart deals like we got with our big guys.
Right.
If they get that from some of their key players, I can see that extending further. But as is now with the age and contracts they're out, it is really a 1 to 2 year window, and they have to feel us breathing down their necks to just take over the East. So, props to them. I don't know exactly where he's going to slot in. They made a lot of moves in the past week. I'd have to really look it over to see what their depth chart is.
I don't even know what their team looks like right now.
No, I know, dude. It's nuts.
They did a lot. If there was one team I'm scared of in the East, it's Carolina. No doubt.
Bar none.
There's no one else really, truly, honestly, that I am worried about. They did good work. I mean, any Carolina fans that are definitely not going to listen to this, you better hope you make it in these next 2 years because we're coming.
Yeah,
we're here. We're not just coming. We're here.
That is going to be the quote of the night leaving this podcast. Jake saying, "We're coming."
Yeah, every episode I'll squeeze that in somehow.
I know we just talked about the Hurricanes, but let's just circle back on Toffoli for a sec. I love him for our system too. We're a very heavy on the rush team, which I think no one really disputes that. We're not really great at in zone offense. We're great off the rush. Toffoli is great off the rush, but he's
One point on that. I do think our in zone offense is going to be a bit better with the
Me too.
Is it going to be our bread and butter like Florida or something? Absolutely not.
Right.
Or Carolina? No, that's just not our game.
Right.
It's going to be better though. It'll be better. Timo, Toffoli, I think, are going to shore that up a bit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But the only thing I guess I have to say about Toffoli again is, he is lacking a little bit of speed. For the Devil system, we run a really, really high octane back and forth game, and Toffoli's foot speed isn't great, but I mean he makes up for it and more with the world's sickest shot. And he just throws pucks at the net and picks corners, and he finds himself in open space a lot, and I think that's going to be really valuable off the rush for the Devils. If you have say Hughes and Bratt streaking down, and Toffoli finding his way to the middle and creating some space for himself, I feel like Toffoli could again repeat another 30-goal season.
BP, if you have any comments, otherwise I got something.
No, go for it.
I haven't seen it talked about too much in amongst Devils fans, maybe a little bit here and there, but I think it's pretty shrewd and understated how awesome it is that we basically have our top six penciled in.
Yep.
But at least 2 out of 3, if not 3 out of 3 of our third line are top 6 guys on most other teams. If we have anyone slumping, anyone not clicking just chemistry wise, and those third line air quotation guys someone's overperforming, we have we know Love likes to shake around lineups.
Yeah,
the ability to juggle a little bit and it not be putting someone baptism by fire. We need you in a top 6 because it's not working. You're not ready for this, but we need to try something.
Right.
Any of that third line, whether it's Palat, Haula, who they both done it, been there, done that, and I'm talking high end octane top 6s they've been a part of. Or as I'm sure we're all hoping, Alex Holtz comes in and lights the world on fire.
Dude, I really want him to succeed so bad. So badly. I feel so bad for him.
If he steps in and is even a bit of what we're hoping for, it's over for this league. I mean, it's over.
If you step in and you have a 21-year-old 20-goal scorer, what? On your third line. Yeah.
Well, not to mention, guys like Haula and Palat, they can step up into the top 6, and that's great. But them stepping up into the top 6 means one of our bona fide top 6ers stepping down into the third line. Like, imagine having a guy like Toffoli or even, let's say for a couple of games, Meier on like a third line. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's unfair.
Have fun with that, other teams. Just enjoy.
I mean, even our fourth line, like for all of the shit that McLeod gets, he's an excellent fourth liner. He really is. He's one of the best fourth line centers in the league, and then Bastian is probably one of the best fourth line wingers in the league. I can see the face you're making there. I think he's very good.
Yeah, so JP, you would know this, BP not as much. I have basically been a Nate Bastian truther since he's been in this organization. Always got a little bit of flack for that, but I said, hey, he is an NHL player.
Yeah.
He deserves a spot on an NHL team. But like I said, as much as I am a homer on this team, I think I like to keep it pretty realistic. I will say McLeod, if not the best, has the argument for the best fourth line center in the league, bar none.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't name another fourth line center that's better.
Nate, in my opinion, is above average fourth line winger. I'm not going to call him one of the best fourth line wingers in the league, but I think he is above average in that role.
Yeah, I mean, my issues with potential issues with McLeod are not on ice issues. So
yeah,
right.
If we're speaking strictly on ice performance, I think McLeod is amazing, and I would love to see him in a Devils uniform for a very, very long time. I think there's just other circumstances that may prevent that.
Yeah, yeah.
But not to go into that, I think Bastian is good, and I think he has value. I do like a lot of what he brings. I just don't think that he's any different than most fourth liners around the league. I think that's kind of where we do get the Devils rose-colored glasses a little bit, where I mean most fourth liners are just fine,
Sure, yeah, I agree with that to a point, but I was looking at our boy Jay Fresh, love Jay Fresh. He has projection cards based off of his previous model. And like you said, most fourth line players are like, okay, like whatever, they're fourth liners. Nate Bastian, he's predicting will be in the 98th percentile for defense. And to have that on your fourth line, 98th percentile across the league on your fourth line is pretty special, I think.
Yeah, and we can't forget, at least, to a point, our power play was the best it was when Nate was on it for a long stretch.
I hate agreeing with that, but you're right.
Regardless, I don't think he's a top, he's not a PP1 guy on this team. He's just not. But it's just true that it was the best it was for a long stretch.
Yeah.
He was on it. Now we have Timo and Toffoli, and there's no shot he is on that top PP anymore. But while he was, I mean, there's credit where credit is due in that part.
So me and my friends have this term for guys like Nate Bastian, where, I think all three of us agree that, the buzzwords of grit and physicality and whatever can generally kind of be lost in overcompensation for players.
Yeah.
But there's a very specific type of grittiness that me and my friends have kind of put together and recognized, where it's these net front deflections, rebounds, those garbage goals, the cleanup crew. We call them, and James Van Riemsdyk was a prime example of this in his prime, when he was scoring like 1 million goals a season simply by, these stupid little rebound, goals that he would put in. No real, finesse to it, but those, as hockey guys like to say, the dirty areas or whatever you want to call it. We call these guys goal goblins. They are absolutely going to grab that goal. So I have been calling Nate Bastian the Devil's goal goblin for a couple years now. And, like I said, I think there's a lot of overcompensation where if that's the only thing you bring to the table, unless you're JVR scoring 50 goals a season for it. Actually, I don't think he hit 50. I don't remember. I think he did once. I don't know. And if that's the only thing you're bringing, you probably don't have much. But there is kind of a certain skill to bring to the table where you can put those goals in, and not a lot of Devils players do end up doing that. So as much as I think he's a fine fourth liner, and I like the camaraderie he brings to certain guys, like I love the whole super buddies thing. He's the goal goblin. He's the goal goblin.
I feel like we kind of have two of them now with Timo. Timo's a dog in front of the net.
Timo, yes. Before Timo joined the team,
right.
Nate was the guy. Now Timo's just so much better.
Well, yeah, obviously.
For the record, James Van Riemsdyk best season goal wise was 36.
36.
So close with 50.
I was thinking of when I was thinking of total garbage can players that accidentally fell into a 50-goal season, I was thinking of Chris Kreider. I'm sorry.
Oh, right.
Of course.
JVR had 54 points that season.
Let's go with that.
And you're not an analytics guy, so these numbers,
Puck goes in goal, I cheer.
Right. Unless it's the other.
Hey, you know what? And this is a tangent we do not need to get into. But there was one time in my life where me and my friend who I was with pre-gamed a little too hard for a Rutgers basketball game, and they were playing against Wisconsin, who's also red. And Rutgers, they usually, basketball teams wear white at home and color on the road. And we didn't realize this when we walked into the arena. Rutgers is wearing red at home. And, they were wearing red at home, and Wisconsin was wearing the white. So Wisconsin, for the first 10 minutes of the game, they would hit a 3-point shot, and I was getting up and yelling and cheering and whatever. And I was looking around and I was like, why is nobody else cheering with me? This is awesome. Go Rutgers. And it took me a while to realize I was cheering for the wrong team for the first quarter of the game. Sorry. I
Was there other trades we wanted to touch on at all?
I mean, Blackwood for a 6th is whatever. He wasn't going to be a part of the team long term, and we're going to get him for pennies on the dollar anyway.
In my opinion, free asset for a guy that just was not going to thrive here.
Exactly.
Kind of similar to some other guys we have traded. Maybe a new home, new destination. Although I don't know if SoCal is going to be Blackwood's preferred destination. But maybe he thrives just somewhere else. I think there was some behind the scenes stuff that maybe just got in his head between the injuries and COVID seasons and everything else going on. But I'd say wish him the best, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm not really up in arms about it, or for one reason or another.
I'm fine he's gone. I think the team's better.
Yeah.
So
I do have something to say about the Riley Walsh trade, which is kind of a weird one. I think it's really, really cool that he traded Riley Walsh to the Bruins of all teams, for a lot of reasons. Walsh was born in Massachusetts. He went to Harvard, which is in Massachusetts. The Bruins need cheap players. He's probably good enough to crack an NHL roster. So I just think it was a really good guy fits move to move him somewhere where he would be, on NHL ice realistically come October. And then to do it for, his home team is I just think it's really cool. I think it's a really good culture that he's putting out into the Devils locker room.
Yeah, you know what? He did this a couple years ago when he traded Will Butcher. Yeah. I think that was kind of the first real moment that Fitz went out and showed, hey, I'm here to make good hockey moves. I'm here to build a good team, but I also have respect for these guys as human beings, and I want to treat my, for all intents and purposes, employees as if they are real people with real lives and real feelings. So he traded Will Butcher to Buffalo, where Will Butcher had a chance to play on an NHL team because he did not have that in New Jersey anymore. And I forget the direct quote, but I remember him saying something around that time where that really was the only reason. It was, we had no need for him anymore. I wanted him to go to a place where he had a real chance to be an NHL player. And
That's exactly what I was going to say. And real quick, Will Butcher got a contract, I think, with Pittsburgh today, 2-way deal. So good for him. But your point is literally what I was going to say. I think Tom has been an absolute class act. It is said over and over in this league that it's a small world out there in the hockey stratosphere, that everyone talks, they all know each other. And I think Fitz is showing that our organization, but definitely him specifically, is a beyond class act. Butcher,
even look at the little dinky 7th rounder to David Poile at the draft. I thought that was really, really cool. I just thought it was cool to say.
Exactly, that was literally where I was going.
Yeah,
it was awesome stuff. I know we are going a little late. We're what our original plans were, I think. But we have a few more points we definitely want to hit on. Do we have any more Any more trade stuff? Or...
Colin Miller for a fifth.
Excellent.
I like it. Yeah, I like it.
Hmm.
I just think it's indicative that Simone Nemec is not going to be on the October opening day roster. But I'm fine with that if he needs to marinate in the AHL.
I actually disagree a little bit. I think
Really?
I mean, a little bit. I think it's a safety plan for if he is determined to not be ready. And that's really about it. Because I think between Miller and Smith, you'll send one of those guys down, probably Smith, through waivers. And if he's grabbed, he's grabbed. If he's not, awesome. If Nemec really forces his way on the team. And,
yeah, that's probably fair.
And if not, then, maybe Nemec, kind of like Luke, comes in at the end of the season.
Right.
I like it for the fact that we have, I think, we already have 6 guys, defensemen, under contract. Ball will make 7. And if Nemec forces his way in some regard, that's 8. So no matter how it shakes out, we have a good 6-man unit, night in, night out, regardless of injuries, because injuries are going to happen.
Right. No, that's
Not accurate.
I know we wanted to kind of touch on the draft and maybe free agency a little bit, but I feel like that's an excellent starting point for kind of our next episode.
Yeah, I agree.
We talked a lot about the trades that we made and the extensions, so I feel like this is kind of a good point to leave it.
The draft is not going anywhere.
Right, exactly.
We got our guys back, new guys that were brought in, some old guys that were sent out. That way we can really give the time it deserves to the draft, who we brought in, who's now in this organization that I can absolutely fawn over. And maybe tomorrow we'll have some more free agency news, as it's been a couple quiet days from Tommy Boy. But as I've said, there's been no media availability yet, so he's cooking. He's
not done.
Yeah, he's got to be doing something, right?
Yeah, I mean, draft and what else we had planned for the next episode, in addition to, I think, unless I'm mistaken here, the kind of the where there's smoke there's fire topic right now is the goaltending trades that are still out there.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be a good thing to start next episode on.
Yeah, absolutely great. All right, we will catch you guys next time.
Awesome. Jesper Bratt's the best player in the NHL.